14th Tipton Community School Board of Trustees meeting to order. And I've asked Mrs. Campbell to lead us in the pledge. If you would all please stand, join us.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Next is the consent agenda items. I've been asked to pull the personnel report for consideration on its own, so I will read it separately, but the consent agenda items are the approval of tonight's agenda, approval of the minutes for the regular session August 10th, 2021, the executive session August 30th, 2021, approval of claims, payroll claims for August 30th, 2021, payroll claims for September 3rd, 2021, and all the accounts payable claims. Approval of an overnight field trip for the FFA conference in Trafalgar on October the 8th, 9th, and 10th of 2021. So I need a motion to approve the consent agenda items.
I motion to approve the consent agenda items.
I have a motion. We have a second.
Second.
All in favor of tonight's approval of consent agenda items, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Now the personnel report is certified staff resignation of Sarah McCann, 8th grade literature teacher. Recommendation, Rachel Carter, social worker at Tipton Elementary School. Logan Tina, 3/4 time art teacher at Tipton High School, and he will also retain his computer tech duties as contracted. Transfer of Scott Wessel, transfer from THS art teacher to TMS literature teacher. Medical leave of absence for classified staff, medical leave of absence for Sarah Allison. Resignation, Kristen Campbell, library assistant, Tipton Elementary School. Trina Mahaney, 3rd shift custodian, Tipton Elementary School. Debbie Maxon, corporation bus driver, Tipton Community Schools. Krista Moore, special needs bus driver aide. Susan Plake, cafeteria employee, athletic custodian, Tipton High School. Talon Stuber. Transfer of Danielle Adams, transfer Tipton Middle School instructional assistant to Tipton Elementary School structural assistant. Lori Crawford, transfer from Tipton Middle School head secretary to Power School coordinator. Linda Weitzel, transfer from transportation secretary to Tipton Middle School head secretary. Recommendation of Jenica Easterly, cafeteria employee at the middle school. Diana Hernandez, cafeteria employee, Tipton Middle School. Beth Craner, ISS supervisor, Tipton High School. Michael Newton, 3rd shift custodian, Tipton Elementary School. Robin Parr, special needs bus driver. Danielle Schuyler, cafeteria employee, Tipton Middle School. Susan Voss, special needs bus aide. Scott Wessel, corporation bus driver. And ECA staff recommendations, Jason Bales, technology integration specialist at the middle school. Glenn Castor, pioneer team lead at Tipton Middle School. Samantha Crouch, technology integration specialist at the Tipton Middle School. And also her duties for 8th grade team lead at the Tipton Middle School. Morgan Dozel, boys varsity tennis coach, Tipton High School. Joshua Fullerton, auxiliary sponsor, Tipton High School. Lynn Gagel, junior varsity volleyball coach at the Tipton High School. And Abigail Speck, 6th grade team lead at the Tipton Middle School. Need a motion and a second to approve the personnel report as read.
I move to approve the personnel report as read.
Second.
A motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
So noted. All right. Next on tonight's agenda is the superintendent's report. Dr. Glaze has some updates for us.
Hopefully my clicker will work. Or it won't. Okay. That's why it's close to me. Okay, first of all, I just thought we would share some renderings from our upcoming greenhouse. I shared these with the board a little bit earlier. This is something that we've been working with our architecture firm Schmidt and Associates. So to give you an idea of some things that we're talking about, obviously the greenhouse is the greenhouse. There's also kind of an archway that we would use for sponsorship, as well as some of these pedestal areas that you see along the side there. They would also be for sponsors. Different pictures of different angles. This would actually be from the roof of the existing ag room at the high school. This would be a view if you were looking at it from essentially the football field. This would be a view if you're looking at it, looking into the school. Again, just pretty straight ahead as far as the service door would be right here. The large door would be about right here. A view from the top. Just all kinds of different crazy views. This would be the view from the side. Last week I did share a little bit about last month I did share a little bit about the budget. Actually, things are working in our favor as far as the budget. We continue to go down. The cost that we're still waiting on is the support of the greenhouse. Basically, we're talking about that being about $55 per square foot. That price could be higher, it could be a little lower. We're hoping it's going to be lower. We feel like that number is a little bit high. But again, that's kind of the cost we're waiting on. We won't know a lot until after we bid and after we go through that process. But I believe the last time we spoke, it was in about the $750 range, and so I wanted to make sure that you all knew that we were making good progress as far as getting the price down. It will be a great facility. It will be great for our kids. So that's essentially what we're looking at. Last week we did have a meeting regarding social and emotional learning at the Tipton Middle School. We had 16 parents attend our meeting. The presentation was by Lynn Calloway. She talked about the weekly lessons that were posted, and also we have the video of the presentation available for anyone who wants to see it. The question and answer part of that presentation we did not include because there were some comments that were probably that could have been legally difficult for us, with some personnel people named and some students named. So we did add the questions in a frequently asked questions section. So the questions that were asked were also put down there, as well as our responses. The next meeting is September the 23rd at 6 p.m. and there will be more information sent out about that as we get closer. And down below here is this is a link to where you can find information about SEL. Things are a little slow tonight. These are the weekly lessons at the middle school. Again, the SEL frequently asked questions, a link to the PowerPoint, and down below is the video, which may or may not be able to get down there too. So anyway, all of it is linked right there. So we want to make sure that we are being transparent, and we want to make sure that parents have access to those lessons and access to our information. So it is there.
With the content that is taught, you said we've been using, does the middle school use the second step as well?
Mm-hmm.
You said we've been using that for several years, correct, or a few years?
It's the one thing that is that we've been doing with SEL. The main part of what we do with SEL in the middle school has been the same for 10 years.
Okay.
There is some second step that has been added in the past few years, particularly the anti-bullying and particularly like suicide prevention, because that's really where they are the most expert, had the most expertise. So those are the two areas that we would use second step. All of the content is vetted by Mrs. Calloway, and she reviews every single lesson. And so everything that you see on there has been reviewed by her, and then sent out to the teachers.
So what's being taught has been taught for the past several years?
What's being
Okay.
taught has been taught. There's really not been any change.
Okay.
In what we've taught as far as social and emotional learning. It is really the same program.
Okay.
Yeah. Also, one of the new additions we have is the COVID dashboard, and this is the link to the COVID dashboard. That, again, can be found here on our website, and again, I'm having trouble scrolling down, so, well, I did get that and scroll down. This tells you about our weekly positivity rates. These are updated on a weekly basis, and this just provides you with a snapshot of how things are going here at Tipton Community Schools with our weekly COVID quarantine and positivity rate with students and with staff. So that is also located on our website. We'll go back here. So first of all, I wanted to congratulate. It was my first experience with the Tipton Pork Festival, so I really enjoyed the event, and I was really impressed with all the royalty. Lots of princesses and queens and all kinds of really beautiful girls dressed up and looking good. So lovely parade, super exciting. I was really thrilled that there were actually 4 bands. Usually we're lucky to, have, in most of the festivals I've seen, luckily to have the home team band. We actually had 4 bands. That's pretty darn exciting. So from the band director in me, that made me very happy to see. We also have some fun news with Officer Maddox and his new ride. I've got some pictures of that, and also wanted to thank the Middle School National Junior Honor Society for their volunteer work at the Tipton Pork Festival. So this is Officer Maddox's new ride. So looking smooth, looking good. Like to see those blue devil colors on that vehicle. So anyway, very cool, and I think we should call it like, the Batmobile or something kind of cool like that. So anyway, very nicely done, and thank you for getting all that donated. That's pretty awesome.
Who were our supporters? Who are our community partners and supporters on that?
I would have to let Officer Maddox, I could give you an idea, but
There will be a press release on Friday.
Yeah,
Great,
yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Thank you.
And this is a picture of our National Junior Honor Society and their volunteer at the Pork Festival booth or tent. Some of our successes. We've had a lot of successes this year. Blue Devil football, wow, pretty incredible. I think we've scored 158 points, and our opponents have scored 7. That's pretty unbelievable. So congratulations to Coach Toll and those players for doing such a great job. I also want to congratulate the marching band. They went to the ISMA Summer Showcase and received a Division I rating with distinction, and I believe won a caption award. So again, congratulations, well done there. One of the things I am most thrilled about is the return of the Blue Crew. Last year I was really concerned after what we had to do with COVID protocols. I worried whether our kids would come back and support our teams, and I just had some concerns about that. I am thrilled to say that they're back and doing a great job. And I absolutely love the tweet that Mr. Robinson sent out where our kids were picking up the trash after the game at Lewis Cass. Again, you just can't beat Tipton kids. They're awesome. I also want to thank Mr. Jaworski and our instructional coaches for planning what I consider to be a really great day of professional development last Tuesday. And I also want to thank our teachers for working really hard to really improve the learning opportunities for our students. So it was a really great day. I really enjoyed it, and I think the teachers did too. And Mr. Jaworski is going to share some responses from that PD, and very positive. For next month, one of the things that I'm doing is a State of the Schools address. During that State of the Schools address, we're going to talk a little bit about our strategic planning. Last winter, our board worked very hard developing a strategic plan with 3 goals of student achievement, facilities, branding, and public relations. And so we're going to report out on that, give some current information, and also share some goals of what we're looking at as we're moving forward. Again, it's a super exciting time to be a part of Tipton Community Schools, and this strategic plan will definitely show that we are making some progress already, but we still have some work to do. And that's it for me.
Okay, all right, thank you. Next is the Spotlight on Schools, and Mr. Jaworski, our Director of Student Achievement and Learning, has a presentation for us as well.
Yeah. Dr. Glaze, if you want to pull up.
I can't get the responses.
That's fine. I've got a plan for that. But if you could pull up the slides for the data, we'll get to that
Absolutely.
second. But real quick, name's Mr. Jaworski, Director of Student Achievement and Learning. I just like to introduce myself to the audience since I know we have some new faces out here. Again, we had a e-learning day on September 7th. Students worked from home virtually, and teachers had a day of professional development. And I can't stress enough how valuable that professional development is for our staff. Like Dr. Glaze said, it was successful. We had really great participation and from all of our teachers K through 12. We're really working towards a more aligned professional development this year, and actually we have sort of a 5-year, tentative 5-year plan for professional development for our staff. This year there's a heavy focus on curriculum and providing a scope and sequence not just for our staff but also for our community, and sharing out what it is that we are teaching our students K through 12, all different subjects. It's a work in progress. It's, again, change is slow, but the plan is by the start of next school year, we would like to have that available for our public to view, and obviously having that shared between different grade levels allows our teachers to see what the expectation is year after year for students, where they're coming from, where they're going to. So again, real quick, because I know we're having some technical difficulties with pulling up some of the data, we do offer some feedback surveys for our staff to complete to inform us on the quality of professional development that we are offering. So it's not just, oh, I thought that went really well. It's, hey, we actually have data that supports this. So of our teachers, we had 70 responses. It's an optional anonymous survey that teachers can feel free to share their honest opinions about how they felt about it. There was a lot of feedback from teachers as far as specific comments. I'll get to those in just a few seconds. I will say of the feedback from our, the topics range from scope and sequence, what we're offering curriculum-wise, also collective commitments. That has to do with what we as a staff really believe and value and live by day to day, and what we always fall back to. A lot of that tends to fall back on, we believe that all students can learn at high levels. I think that was a common one across each of the buildings, and obviously that reflects a lot of what we're working towards in our school mission vision with working together for student success. We also had a UDL piece, that's Universal Design for Learning. Again, that's the big focus of our instructional coaches this year, to help our teachers be a little bit more inclusive with their instructional practices, focusing on engagement, action, and representation. So again, that was the third leg, and then the fourth leg of it was offering some extended professional, some extended training on Power School. I know that's still a sore spot for our school district. Again, changing student information systems is a challenge, but again, we're trying to offer as much training and professional development for our staff as possible with that. I will just really briefly, I picked out a handful of feedback, both positive and critical. One of them was, I would love more interactive PD sessions, even sessions taught by teachers on teaching topics that are that they're interested in. Sometimes it's nice to learn from fellow staff and see what works for them in their classrooms, which again, with this feedback, I'm really grateful for it, because that helps us, again, identify what's the staff looking for, how can we, again, improve our professional development. A couple other ones, glad to see we're finally heading in the right direction with curriculum and sharing strategy opportunities within grade levels. And then finally, this is probably one of the most beneficial PDs we've had in a long time. Thank you. So again, a lot of positives in there. Again, a few critical ones, but again, we take it all in stride and just keep working to get better.
What was the negative one you was talking about?
Would love more interactive PD sessions taught by teachers. So I wouldn't necessarily call it a negative so much as critical as, yes, there's something that we can do to get better, not just, trying to pump us up saying, oh, it's all great, all wonderful stuff. Yeah, that was that.
Okay.
NWEA. So NWEA is the Northwest Evaluation Association. It's a test we give 3 times a year, fall, winter, spring. With that, if you want to go ahead and click on to the next slide, I will say that we are still, full disclosure, we are still completing the NWEA test for the fall. Of the roughly 1,400 students we have, each student takes about 2 tests. So that's about 2,800 tests. We were under 100 by the start of the week. We are much less than that now. So again, we're wrapping up those tests. So the data that I'll be sharing with you tonight is somewhat incomplete. There's still a small percentage of students that are finishing, but again, this is fairly representative of what we're going to see throughout the year. So again, the purpose of the NWEA, again, what we're doing with our data is it's to help, first off, inform board decisions. When we make any kind of decision-making process, you always want to use data to kind of help support what you're deciding. Again, providing some school improvement targets. That's something that each building is using. We're looking at data to decide where are the needs for our students, how can we support our teachers to help meet those needs of our students. Enhancing the instructional focus. Again, our teachers use this data. The data I'm going to give is very district-wide, very high level. NWEA provides a lot of data that teachers can use at the classroom level that provides specific information on how students do in different reporting categories that's aligned to iLearn. Again, NWEA is somewhat of a predictor of how students will do on iLearn, so again, that's one of the other reasons why we use it. Again, it provides evidence to support different student placements. Again, we don't just pick students to get placed in different classes however we want. It's based on data. And then finally, monitoring student growth. Again, just kind of keeping track of where kids are, where they're going, and making sure that we're keeping kids on pace. One motto I always go by is 1 year's growth in 1 year's time. That's what we need to guarantee for our students, 1 year's growth in 1 year's time. If we get more than that, awesome, but that is our expectation. That's our minimum there. Next. So here are the 5 topics I'm going to touch on, and forgive me, this might seem a bit lengthy. I'm trying to keep myself to 10 minutes. The idea is there is a lot of data to break down with NWEA. If you don't believe me, you can take a look at my desk right now. It's covered in sheets. But the 5 topics I really wanted to talk about today are nationally normed data, comparing the fall scores from 2020 to this year, identifying the growth goals for our upcoming spring, where we're at and where we're trying to get to, projecting iLearn 2022 pass rates, and then finally how we're using that data to make some decisions going forward. So if you wouldn't mind going to the next one here. Again, board members, you have a packet with this information. If anybody's interested to see this in more detail, again, just let me know. I'm more than happy to share. But there are a lot of numbers. What I want to kind of draw your eye to on this slide and the next slide, this is for mathematics. Again, this is NWEA is a nationally normed test. Students across the country take this test. These are the median scores for students across the country. So really, again, to kind of help draw your eye to this, in the middle there in blue, where it says NWEA median, fall scores, you can see kindergarten, 140, first grade, 160, and so on. Again, that's about the 50th percentile of where students will typically fall at medium. If you hit on the next one, again, that'll show you the reading scores. So again, if you're ever curious what the score that your child receives on NWEA, this is how it's relatable. I mean, if you just get a number of 156, that doesn't really tell you a whole lot, but having it compared to a national norm does. And that's something that we're hopefully going to be using with our teachers. Next. So obviously, the next natural progression is how do we compare to those national norms? And so again, this is from 2020, so last fall. Again, I like to compare that. It's difficult because, again, we're in a different year, it's different circumstances, but it's the next closest thing we have. So compared to 2020, looking at those Tipton scores for math on the left, reading on the right, you can see Tipton for kindergarten, 147. The national median was 140. So the difference there being 7. We were 7 points above what the median national child would be. And again, you can read that through the rest of them. Again, our scores, the difference in those scores range anywhere from 0 in 6th grade to 7 in multiple grades. Same thing in reading, range from 1 to 7. So again, that was pretty solid. When we go into this year, you'll notice there are a few reds. What this is essentially telling us is that our kids are starting further back, all right? They are not where they were last year. So our students are a little bit further behind the start line. That just means that there's more work for our teachers to try to get these kids caught up. And that's to be expected. That was something we addressed when we talked about our iLearn data. The state has recognized this. The state has already put out some research to share with the state as far as what needs to be done in order to help make up some of this ground for our students. Again, a lot of that comes from remediation through, I believe we have study tables that we're going to be offering soon. There's also remediation done within the classroom. It's also going to be really critical that we start as teachers, and this is what we're doing in our district professional development on e-learning day, is prioritizing standards, identifying what are the most critical standards for success this year and next year, whatever that happens to be, whether that's the next grade level, whether that's college, whether that's a career, whatever it happens to be, identifying what are those guaranteed standards that we are promising that these students will leave knowing and will help them be successful wherever they're going to be. So again, this is the data. Again, it is what it is. It's not good or bad. It's how we use that data that actually makes it worth something. Next. Again, comparing fall last year to fall this year, obviously we see that huge drop. Again, that's going to happen when students are out of the building, whether it's for virtual learning or whether it's for illness or close contact tracing, all that stuff. Students learn better when they're in the building. And so again, this data just echoes that. I will note that what was interesting between the two, there was actual, our students are more prepared going into 6th grade this year than they were last year. I thought that was one interesting piece. Again, the green and the sea of red obviously jumps out at you. So that's one thing I thought was interesting. Something happened with our 5th grade students through last year that, again, they saw some kind of growth compared to last fall. So again, some positives to pull from this data as well. Next. Looking at growth goals, this is something that was requested to kind of identify what exactly growth is going to look like at each level. NWEA is a very odd test in the sense like growth doesn't look the same at every grade level. Earlier grades, younger grades, I should say, expect more growth than the older or later grades. So that's why you see the drop in growth projections throughout the years. I will note, the one thing, again, a lot of this information, growth index, growth percentile, it's a lot of fancy math, statistical stuff. What I really want to point out is that when you're looking at that growth percentile, what that's basically telling you is that's how much the score has been dropped as far as projection goes. So for example, growth index on 1st grade, 20.5 is the projected growth. Negative 1.54 is the growth index. That means that the projected growth nationally is somewhere around 22.1. That puts us, but our growth here is at 20.5. That puts us in the 6th percentile for 1st grade. That's a lower growth. We are expected to have lower growth, which is not a good thing, is what I would say. However, that doesn't mean our kids can't reach that kind of growth. It's just letting us know, hey, right now your kids are starting further behind than where other kids are nationally. Same thing you'll see in 3rd grade. They're in the 1st percentile. Same with 5th grade. Same with 8th grade. Again, NWEA testing. 7th grade's in the 2nd percentile. But then you see 6th grade in the 57th percentile. So again, this is just data that we need to analyze and look at and consider what is happening with all of this. Go ahead and hit next. Okay, this is the fun one. iLearn projections. This is one that everyone's obviously really interested in because part of the purpose of having NWEA is it's supposed to serve as somewhat of a predictor of iLearn. I will tell you based off of looking at this, just looking at that last column, it's the difference between what we scored on iLearn and what we scored on NWEA. So for example, when you see a green number there, the 10.5 for 3rd grade, it means we did better on iLearn than was projected on NWEA. So again, this is for math. 3rd grade math, we did better than the projection that NWEA set out for us by 10%. That's a pretty significant number. Same thing with 4th grade, the opposite direction. We were projected to pass at 62.5%. We passed at a rate of 49%. Again, a significant drop there. But again, that would just make me question how close is that validity for NWEA aligned to iLearn? there's currently research being done to see how accurate that is. And again, you can see the data from those other ones. If you click on the next, you'll see the the ELA. Again, this is for NWEA last year predicting this last spring's iLearn. Again, a little bit closer until you get to about 6th or 7th grade again, but what we're seeing here is that our NWEA scores, for the most part, are overestimating how many of our kids are going to be successful on iLearn. So keep that in the back of your mind as we go to the next couple slides here. So iLearn projections, all right? Let me make sure I'm very clear about how I explain this. First off, we're still collecting data, so there are more students that we're collecting from. Second off, you saw how wildly off those projections were on NWEA, good and bad, so keep that in mind. Right now, based off of just one test in the fall, in the middle of a pandemic, our 3rd grade class is projected to pass math at a rate of 40.6%. 4th grade math, 50.9%, so on and so forth. 7th grade math projected at 16.6%. If you were to take last year's difference, all right, those numbers we were talking about, the red and green numbers on that last slide, if you were to take that difference and apply it to this year, which I will be 100% honest is maybe not the best thing you want to do, but we're playing this just to see what that number looks like, we would see projected scores at 51% passing for our 3rd grade, 37% passing for 4th, 40% passing for 5th, and you get the extreme where 7th grade, 6% passing. Again, not pretty numbers. They're ugly numbers, and I am not sitting here and saying that our 7th graders are going to pass 6%. I'll be very clear about that. We have high expectations for our students, and we expect to surpass these numbers by far. However, if we do nothing, if we just continue the same old, then this is what we can expect. That's why we're trying to institute some changes in what exactly is being taught in our classes. Have we identified we are teaching the Indiana standards for that? What kind of content are we using? Are we collaborating with one another? If we're working in isolation, we're not better alone, we're better together. We're better working together. And so we're working on that with creating professional learning communities within our buildings. So again, this data, while it looks a little scary and gloom and doom, it's just a warning. It's just a, hey, this is where we're currently at today. But we have a lot of time with our students still, and we can have a lot of growth and a lot of impact on them. And that's what I expect from our staff. If you hit next, I think we got one more. Yep. So big picture, what are we doing with all this data? Again, a lot of numbers, and I have a C more to share if you're interested. But what we're doing at each of the buildings, at the elementary, the focus is on writing and measurement. I actually just got out of a school improvement meeting today where we talked about what's the root cause for issues in writing and measurement. We're identifying what those root causes are. We're going to apply professional development to those specific areas, and that will show measured growth by the end of the year. That's part of our school improvement plan. Same thing with the middle school. It's writing and numeracy. High school, the reason it says TBD is the elementary and middle school are on year 2 or 3, I believe, of their school improvement plan. Year 2. The high school has decided to scrap what they've had in the past and follow the same format that the elementary and middle school are, and we are using our school improvement committee to actually build that. So we're still in the process of building what exactly are those factors that we need to focus on in the high school. Again, all that's supposed to be data-driven. That's what we're working on. That's what we're focused on, and that's where we are currently at in academics.
Do you think that, which do you think is a bigger factor? The kids aren't in school because they're being contact traced and or testing positive, or what's being taught in the classroom? That's
a great question, and to be honest, I can't give you an answer to that. I haven't done any kind of research on it. From my perspective, I would say both. Both play a role. You want to try to keep kids in school as much as possible, and at the same time, it doesn't matter what type of, we could have the best teachers in the world, but if we're not teaching the standards, if we're not teaching the content that's going to be measured on iLearn, it doesn't matter. They're not going to do well in the test because they're not getting that content. And again, I will say this. We have done curriculum mapping in the past to some lesser extents, and we have teachers who have a great map already and that they are using that. And you can see that in some of the scores that we have. But there are certainly areas that need to be growing, and that's why we're focusing on our professional development on curriculum mapping, scope and sequence, UDL, professional learning communities. Any other questions? I have lots of data, so like I said, anytime you want to talk.
Okay. The other department reports are in your packet. Student services, Mr. Clark. Food services at Mr. Prohl. and Technology. Mr. Gingrich, does anybody have any questions that Dr. Glaze might be able to answer on those reports? Nope. All right, next is the financial report, and Dr. Glaze has all those numbers.
First of all, just kind of the report for the end of August. Education fund cash balance is $232,000. And the other funds listed, debt service has a cash balance of $1.2 million, and operations a cash balance of $1.9 million. Currently, our rainy day fund balance is $2.5 million. So we're always happy when we end the month in the positive and have a little bit of cash balance left. So I think that that's definitely a good thing. So as we heard earlier with the budget report, I think that that's going to continue to get better as we move through the next couple of years. So that's pretty much it in a nutshell.
All right. Anybody have any questions for Dr. Glaze? All right, next is old business, and we have one item to consider from last month, consideration to approve the administrative guidelines and board policies on second reading. In June of 2021, Neola pushed out a series of updates to administrative guidelines and board policy due to new legislation enacted by the Indiana General Assembly in the 2021 session. An overview of the policy changes are included in your packet. It is recommended that the Board of Trustees approve all policy updates on the second reading. Does anybody have any questions on those from last month? If not, I would entertain a motion in a second to approve those.
I move to approve the administrative guidelines and board policies on their second reading.
We have a second? A motion and a second to approve the administrative guidelines and board policies. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you. Next is new business. Consideration to advertise the 2022 budget, capital projects fund plan, and bus replacement plan. The 2022 budget, CPF plan, and bus replacement plan were shared with the board during the work session held prior to this meeting. This request would allow us to advertise these items. The public hearing is scheduled for the 28th of September, and the board would then consider approval of the budget at the October 12th school board meeting. It's recommended to grant permission to advertise the 2022 budget, CPF plan, and the bus replacement plan. So we need a motion and a second.
I move to accept the 2022 budget, the capital plan, and the bus replacement plan.
We have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you. Next is consideration to create a preschool and before and after school care fund. In 2021-2022 school year, we doubled the number of students in our full-day preschool program. Since we have completed our Paths of Quality certification, Tipton Community School Corporation, some of the students are eligible for On My Way pre-K funding, and as well as other federal funding sources. In combination with the On My Way pre-K federal funds and student tuition, our preschool program is totally self-funded. Since the preschool and before and after care is self-funded, we need to create a new fund. It is recommended that the Board of Trustees approve the attached resolution creating a preschool and before and after care fund, and that resolution is in your packet. Does anybody have any questions on that? If not, I would entertain a motion and a second.
It's not so much a question, Gary, but I would really like to commend the folks in the elementary school as well as Dr. Glaze for the vision and the amount of work and effort that it has taken to achieve those certifications, and to, I think it's really, really to their credit. The number was 32 enrolled, is that correct, Dr. Glaze? To have 32 preschool students enrolled in that program when last year there were 3, is that correct? Or about, yeah. Small. And so the amount of work and effort by our administration, by our teachers, and by our paras. I'm really excited about that, so.
Okay, need a motion and a second to approve creating the fund.
I move to create a fund for the preschool for before and after care fund.
Second.
A motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, all right, thank you. Next is other matters to come before the board. Did anybody else on the board have anything? No? Okay. Advisory committee meetings coming up is business affairs and meeting on the 20th of this month. Branding and public relations is meeting in October the 18th. Facilities and technology on November the 15th, and December 20th, the personnel committee will meet. Schedule of events coming up is ADM, as Dr. Glaze mentioned earlier, September 17th. Middle school SEL parent meeting is on the 23rd. A special board meeting and public hearing is at 5:30 p.m. on September the 28th. And the RFP proposal response meeting with the facilities and technology or facilities committee is on the 28th as well. October 11th and 12th is ISBA and IAPSS fall conference in Indianapolis. And then our next board meeting will be on October the 12th. So the next thing on the agenda is comments from the community, and I just want to remind everybody that these are for a time for you to make your comments. It's not a question and answer session with the board, and we just make a note of whatever is on your mind and take it into consideration in future decisions. So with that, Mrs. Rodabaugh has the list, and when we call your name, come up front and speak into this microphone, please.
Thank you. And as a reminder, I'm also the official timer, so I will have a 3-minute time limit for everyone. First on my list of sign-ins was Emma Fegg. Okay, thank you.
You said all of it, actually. It was perfect. It was
Okay.
perfect.
Thank you. Okay. Second on my list is Dixie Hynett.
Could I wait until I hear other remarks?
I can move you down in the list a couple, sure. Okay, Kelly Lightfoot.
I'd like to hear what she has to say since she's coming in before me. I'd like to hear what she has to say.
I will.
Yeah.
Okay, I will go down the list, I promise. Kelly.
Hi.
Hi.
Thanks. A couple points I wanted to make. I know I appreciate that almost everyone, I think, responded to my email that I sent when my daughter got contact traced. Thank you so much for doing that. I know in my email I said that almost half of her teachers agreed to have Zoom calls in order for her to keep up on her classrooms. Only one ended up doing that. And guess which class she feels the most comfortable in now, 2 weeks after coming back? One. She feels behind, she's stressed, she's anxious. My daughter's anxious no matter what. This just makes it worse, and her grades reflect that. And I really am imploring you to please make it the parent's choice with contact tracing, whether they stay in school or not. My kid does better in school. There's no question about that. While I appreciate, I know you're trying to be safe, but I know you're probably gonna have to make some decisions as we're getting into the winter with COVID. I know you're talking to the health department, and while I know they're doing a great job, to my knowledge, there are no physicians on the health department committee in regards to COVID. Please talk to our local physicians in Tipton. Talk to several of them, get their opinions, see what they're seeing. Are our kids that are getting sick, how sick are they getting? Are they recovering quickly? What are the symptoms they're getting? Please find out that data, because I think that's important. When it comes to masks, find out their opinions on masks. I appreciate that we're not doing masks right now, or they're making it optional. I hope that continues. But my biggest thing, especially, is contact tracing. I want my kids in school if they're well. If they're not sick, or if they're sick, I will keep them home. But if they are not sick, because my daughter got 0 symptoms, we know who she was exposed to. She sat right next to him every day for, right up until that point. She never got sick. So she needs to be there. The rest of our kids need to be there. I mean, I think data is showing we're struggling. Our kids are struggling in school. So please, please stop the contact tracing to where they're required to leave the school system. Thanks.
Thank you, Kelly. We certainly, I guess I'd like to follow up that comment, just to know that it's a daily discussion of the thing to do. So I need to just reassure, beyond your email, that it's a daily discussion of the correct step of what to do. So, next on my list is Christy Boyer.
I just ditto everything that Kelly said.
Okay. Thank you. Next, I will go to Dixie Hynett. Okay, thank you. Next, Erin Conaway.
Hi, everyone. First, I just want to say thank you to all of you. I know the positions that you sit in, most of the time you're probably not having very much fun, given a lot of the circumstances. So I do appreciate your service and all the hard work that you put into making these decisions and making the corporation run. I also want to express my gratitude and excitement for all the exciting things that's happened within the corporation. The greenhouse, the capital improvements. There's a tremendous amount of excitement in the corporation at all levels that has not been here for a long time. So that's a tribute to many before you and you on the board, as well as you, Dr. Glaze. My comments will be direct and quick about COVID. We need to normalize COVID. And it's simple microbiology that it's a virus that's not going away, so we need to normalize it like we do every other sickness. I also believe the corporation needs to stop promoting and communicating testing for COVID. It serves little to no purpose, and we need to start handling the individuals that are sick and not the individuals that do not have symptoms. To Kelly Lightfoot's point, we need to stop our contact tracing period. You have the flexibility from the state to work with the county's health department and the commissioners. You have that email in your inbox that states that you can work with them to create that flexibility. You need to work with them to keep healthy and symptom-free kids in school. You also need to use all the resources to problem solve. If you're not talking to the correct medical and legal professionals to keep the symptom-free kids in school, then you need to find different ones, because there's many out there. You're talking to the wrong ones. You also have an example of a policy in your inbox that I created that provides an example of that creates a flexibility and safe environment. On Kelly's point as well, my son was contact traced, and the amount of education and instruction he got was pitiful. He had 20 minutes of work for those 10 days, period, for his entire classes each day, 20 minutes. I really appreciate your data, and it proves full-heartedly the kids need to stay in school. You also need to keep the decisions open to parents, get them involved with health decisions per situation, and not to hit the easy button with just going to all masks when masks are proven not to work. Remember, you're the School Board of Education, not the School Board of Health. There are ways to create a healthy and safe environment, keeping all kids that are symptom-free in school instead of struggling to learn for 10 days away from any instruction. For those of you that like data, that's 22% of a 9 weeks period that they are going to lose or only get 20 minutes worth of work in that 9 week period. Again, I ask you to create a policy quickly and soon that makes COVID normal and keeps symptom-free kids in school, and truly consider the draft that I provided before that keeps kids in school and gets the quality education that you guys have promised them.
time and information. Thank you. Next is Vicki Boyd. Okay, thank you. Larry Murdock.
Good evening, and thank you for this opportunity to address you tonight. Again, my name is Larry Murdock. This is my 7th year working with special needs students as an instructional assistant and aide. 2 years at both Noblesville and Hamilton Heights, and now in my 3rd year here at Tipton Middle School, where I also coach football and track. My main role at TMS is as the one-on-one aide with Alexander Davis. Alexander is an 8th grader, was born with SMA, spinal muscular dystrophy, a rare condition that physically confines him to a power wheelchair, but does not limit his mind and his spirit. Alexander is an honor roll student, a member of the National Junior Honor Society, and he's also a shining example of perseverance to his classmates and to me. The reason I'm here tonight is to advocate for the special needs students, teachers, and aides at TMS. Special ed teachers Trent Welbaum, Tamara Smelser, and Samantha Crouch, as well as assistants Jody Hettinger, Missy Stone, and Martha Burris, are outstanding educators and even better people. They all have an undying passion to serve these most vulnerable and challenged TMS students. I'm here to share their frustrations regarding the ongoing habitual misuse of the TMS special needs aides. In my 3 years at TMS, I have seen the special needs aides routinely removed from their roles and placed in other classrooms to assume the duties of teachers as substitutes. Teachers and aides are hesitant to voice their opinions lest they be labeled as boat rockers or troublemakers. In the past administration, some of the aides were even told, "You don't have to work here." Our concerns have been repeatedly shared with TMS administration to no avail, and the problem is only getting worse. So far this school year, the special ed aides have been used as substitute teachers 48 times, 48 days that they are out of their roles as special need educators. One aide was even told this week that she would be a science substitute teacher for this week and next as well. Of course, our concerns have been repeatedly shared. As I stated earlier, the TMS special ed students need a lot of extra help that they are mandated and required by the state of Indiana, help that they are not getting due to the absence of the aides in the classrooms. Mr. Welbaum, Mrs. Smelser, and Mrs. Crouch are working doubly hard, but it seems as if they are being asked to do their jobs with one hand tied behind their backs. I was told at a recent meeting with the aides of the school that other schools just rewrite the special ed students' individual education plans, reducing or even eliminating the requirements for aides, thereby effectively throwing these students under the bus. I hope and pray that this community values these students more than that and would never go down that path. I would ask that this board to find a way to attract qualified substitute teachers because the WILSOB program is not working. This program involves arduous application process that takes applicants several hours to complete, asking them for unnecessary information and requiring applicants to invest their own money in fees and background checks. I know of individuals who have completed the application and have never once received an automated message from WILSUB to substitute at TMS. The concept of WILSUB program is a good one. Develop a pool of substitutes from which to pull. But in practice, something is breaking down. I've also heard that many other schools who use the WILSUB system pay their substitutes more money than does TMS. So maybe that's another part of the problem. In closing, I can't imagine that TCSC is knowingly allowing the practice of using special ed aides as in-house, prepaid substitute teachers, thereby saving money over paying outside workers. I also can't imagine that TCSC doesn't see the value their aides provide to the educational success of these special needs students. And I also can't imagine that TSC doesn't feel the need to follow the mandates set forth by the state of Indiana. I do know a few things. I know that Tipton has a lot of pride in our community and especially in our schools. And I also know that Tipton can do better. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Blake?
Could I ask for the October meeting that we have a breakdown in each building as to how many aides are pulled to cover classrooms?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next on my list is Mr. William Wolford.
Hello, my name is Will. Hello. My name is William Wolford, and I am here to address the contact tracing in Tipton Middle School. This is a very struggling time for all these TMS students. I know most of these students have gone home and just have done nothing over this quarantine. It is very hard for these students to learn and get their full education when there's nobody trying to encourage them to do their work and when they just have to encourage themselves. This is a very hard time for all these students. I know I had 125 kids quarantined in 1 week, and I know my math teacher has stated that he has around 200 missing assignments that he's put zeros in for the grade books. That is a outrageous number for that class in general. Math is a very strong subject kids need to learn, and when most of the assignments are on paper, the kids that are quarantined at home cannot do these easily. They either have to print them off or write down all the questions on another piece of paper. I've done this myself. It takes longer to write down all the questions than it does to answer them. This is very stressful on all the students, very stressful on on math teachers and all the other teachers that have to put in missing work and missing assignments weeks after kids have been quarantined. I would like to give a shout out to Mrs. Light. I forget her name, but she came up here. She did a fantastic job, and I've addressed most of what I need to do, and I hope you all have a great day.
William, how many times have you been in contact traced?
I've been contact traced twice. The second day of school, I was out for 7 days, but they contact traced me on Friday and counted Friday, Saturday, and Sunday for my 10 days. And then I just got all my work made up. The next 4 days it took, because I did not have all of my Google Classroom in my computer at the time. So I came back to school with two classes of 1 week's of work I had total no idea how to do. So I had to make up all that work, and then 4 days later, I just got done getting all my assignments done, and I got quarantined that night, and felt like a total restart. It was very difficult.
And did you ever get sick?
No, I have not been sick for the past maybe 3 months, and that was probably about a month before school started.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Alan Wolford.
Would you like to talk yet? You're all great. I loved all your stats. There was a lot of work put into that. Only problem I've got with that is my daughter at the end of the year last year had all S, and at the end of the year, 1 week later, she passed every class. So I hope not all your calculations there are falsified. My son was quarantined. We all know this. He did all that time up there on Courthouse Square. In that time, he spent 2 days of that, Tuesday and Wednesday, doing nothing but calling his friends and drawing maps of each class and showing where he sat. He proved without a doubt that he was not even near that girl. I came in and asked Mr. Ayers, who was the contact trace person who's in charge of this. He said he was, volunteered. He was the one. I asked him, I showed him all of William's handwriting, all in paper. I handed it to him. Classes drawn out. He only had 5 classes with that so-called contact trace girl. One of those classes she skipped. The other one she skipped. The other one was PE, alphabetical. He was on this room. She was at the end of this room. The other class they was in, she sat in the front, he sat in the back. The last 2 classes, it was group classes. She sat in one group, he sat in another. When I was in high school, middle school, whenever I got kicked out or whatever I did something wrong, and my parents got a note, it stated on their date and time and what I did. All I simply did was ask Mr. Ayers to give me the date and time that Williams' contract traced with this girl. It was not available. He told me he had absolutely no idea. And this is the man that tells me he's in charge of contact tracing. Now I hope you all see where my anger's coming from. That I presented, and I apologize for that. But there's a lot of people upset. We all need back in school. This contact tracing has got to stop. He's done missed a game. The day he talked about that he spent 4 days doing makeup work in school instead of doing his regular work, that day they let him start running the ball. I held off. He told me how proud he was. He was going to get to run the ball. And then I had to tell him, after your 4 days of making up work and you finally get told you're getting to run the ball, you're quarantine traced again. It's got to stop. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next on my list is Mr. Rob Cochran.
I will pass, thank you.
Thanks, Rob. Mrs. Laura Satong.
Well, I think we can all agree virtual learning doesn't work very well by those scores there. And you've pretty much proved with your own numbers that the contact tracing needs to stop. I can't believe there was such a huge gap between all the kids that were sent home and the teeny little bit that tested positive, and that's not even saying if any of them had symptoms or not. So I just support everybody that has spoke to this issue. And I want to thank you, Dr. Glaze, for being at the middle school social emotional learning meeting last week and being a part of that discussion. We need to have more discussions. We need to have more talking and not silence. We're a small town and everyone knows each other in one way, shape, or form, and we should return to that norm, not issue a statement from the board using semantics as to why the comment portion of the meeting is for comments only, not questions or dialogue. You know, you guys are elected officials, and as a constituent, you know, I want to know what you're thinking. I want to know the reason behind decisions, what goes in the decision-making process, because with silence, a lot might get inferred whether it's correct or incorrect, but that's how assumptions start, and that's how things get off track real quick when we don't talk. You know, because one of the single biggest problems in communication is the illusion that it has taken place in the first place. Those that don't understand your silence will probably not understand your words or assume something may or may not be true. And just to keep the discussion going, because I know it's currently masks are a choice. And we can see by the news and everything, all kinds of mandates that seem to either be coming from the state or the federal government or working their way towards that. And I, like many, had read the two-tier, choices there. Either everybody wears a mask and we get rid of contact tracing and all that stuff, or we continue kind of doing what we're doing. And at first when I read that, I was kind of on the fence. I'm like, oh, okay, great, we'll get rid of it, mask. But then I realized I'm reading it from an adult perspective, and that's kind of how it was written. It was not written from a kid's perspective, and that's who it impacts. So I read it again, and then I just kind of felt like, it just seemed like it was almost a bribe, like, okay, if we do this, we can get rid of the contact tracing, and we'll still get our money from the federal government or whatever entities are giving us money to support things going, and then maybe the parents will be quiet and we won't start talking about it. It just seemed wrong. And furthermore, I actually spoke to kids. I sat down with about 15 of them, and I asked them, I said, if you were given these two choices, which would you want to do? And virtually all of them were like crying. They said, please don't make us wear masks. Don't let them make us wear masks. They don't listen to us. We can't breathe. One girl went as far as to say when she has it on, she can't breathe. She gets so anxious. She gets short of breath. She can't focus. She can't concentrate. She gets headaches. She gets dizzy. Another girl said her shortness of breath gets so bad that her throat feels like it's going to close off. The bottom line is they all said in unison, I can't breathe. And the last time those words were spoken over a year ago, it caused a massive protest and rioting that we're still seeing to this day over those 3 words. So after that conversation and in talking with parents, and friends obviously, to get the kids' perspective, if it comes to that choice, there's no way. I'm going to listen to the kids. We can't even consider putting masks on full time. We can't do it. In the community, when someone says, I can't breathe, we call 911. On the back of every medication, it says seek medical attention. And I'm just going to finish up by saying there was another kid that said, I just want to be in school. I want to learn. I don't want to repeat the 7th grade. And then people think I'm stupid because I'm not stupid. I'm a really smart kid. And that kid was Ryan White. And his words all those years ago are still true today. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's the end of my list.
Okay. All right. I would entertain a motion to adjourn then.
I'll motion to adjourn.
Motion and a second.
Second.
Motion and a second to adjourn. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right. Meeting's adjourned. Thank you.